Hey guys, welcome back to Surviving Ish. I was just telling Daniel, who's with us today, he's been with us before, but we just had a 30-minute conversation off record. And I was like, why are we not recording this? This would have been such a great, like, mini episode because we kind of did get a little political, but it wasn't like I'm right, you're wrong. This is what I believe. It was just in the political sphere of things. And I was like, why are we not recording this? So finally, I was like, okay, screw it. We're hitting record and we're just going to talk. But you, to the listener, you have been on Unholier. You've been live with us on TikTok and you have been on Ish. And so I'm going to put all the links to all those in the show notes because some of the conversations that we have or things that we may refer to, you may have needed to have heard those episodes first to really get the full context of things. So those will be provided to you. But Daniel, my friend, I'm surprised you're here.
Surprised?
Because we were supposed to meet a last week,
Yeah. Yep.
and I messaged you and I was like, "Hey, I came to get my oil changed and I'm buying a new car instead." And I was there for 5 hours. But damn it, in my defense, I take my car to because I get like free oil changes or whatever when I bought my previous car. And so I take it back to the dealership. And I was out walking around. They're like, yeah, your car's up in like 15 minutes. So I was just kind of walking around, texting, playing a game on my phone, looking at cars. And this really cute guy walked up to me. I was like, hey, what's going on? I bought a car. So cute guy, oil change, David Boss car. So I had to message him and was like, can we reschedule? I'm so sorry. So sorry that happened. I'm blaming the cute guy. I'm blaming him.
No problem.
Thank you for your grace and kindness and understanding and patience and all that. But before we get started, what are you surviving ish?
Okay, so what I was surviving, so we recently moved into a new house that's way farther away from work.
Oh,
We
wow,
used to live,
congrats.
yeah, thanks. We moved, so we used to live like 6 minutes from our job. It'd be just a very quick drive. Now our drive is like 25 to 30 minutes, which is that is a bummer. And so traffic tends to get on my nerves, especially people driving slow. And I'm just like, you're in the fast lane. What are you doing? Why? What I did is I said it's a reversal, an ish reversal, right? Recently, or what I've been doing, of course, I can always listen to podcasts and stuff on the way. That's great. I've been listening to like language learning software so I can improve my Spanish. I can stumble along when I need to in Spanish, but I've been listening to some more advanced learning software so I can increase my Spanish level so that I can maybe, and I haven't said anything to anybody about this yet. This is just first here. I've been considering putting out some Spanish language TikToks about deconstruction and stuff like that. So
Brilliant. I love that.
yeah, there's not a whole lot of voices in the Spanish speaking world for that.
Yeah. And to the listener, in case they haven't heard your previous episode, your father is it right? Your father speaks Spanish?
Right, he's Colombian. So I'm Colombian on my dad's side. I look more like my mom's side, but if you see my dad, you'll see
But
what,
does he also
yeah.
speak English? I can't remember.
Yeah, so he was so my grandparents, my abuelo and abuela, moved over from Colombia like when my abuela was pregnant with him, basically. So he was born technically in New Jersey. He did his first language was still technically Spanish, but then he learned English as growing up in New Jersey, and then they moved to Miami, and he grew up further there, went to high school there, met my mom, etc.
Yeah, that's
But so he speaks both Spanish and English perfectly fluently, no accent either way. Yeah, you wouldn't even know that he's fluent in Spanish unless you are also, and you talk to him, and you're like, oh, whoa, okay.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. Which we're going to get more into what you're doing on social media. We're going to get more into that in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I
So
I love that.
yeah, it's been something that I think is so under like it's there's just so little in that space for those who speak primarily Spanish. And also I like learning anyways, so that
Yeah.
using that ish, right? And using it in a way that is sort of it's more beneficial instead helped me reframe something that was annoying me before.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the point to all this, in my opinion, of why I wanted to do this is because I wanted those spur of the moment. Like I try to like make a list of these grievances, but I've maybe used 5 out of the 100 because before I get on a show, something else ends up becoming, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm talking about. I need to talk to my buddy Daniel and vent about this with what just happened in this past 15 minutes before we hit record or before we jumped on. So I've barely even used the ones that I tried to pre-list just to have backups for. What sparked this with me is I found that I had crazy road rage. And the universe happens in crazy ass ways. And so I had on a psychologist, and my ish was road rage. And she was like, you know, this is related to your trauma, right? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. And so we kind of broke it down and discussed it. I was like, oh, wow. And so my road rage has calmed down a bit unless you're driving slow in the fast lane. There's no forgiveness with that. It's straight to jail.
Yeah, straight to jail immediately.
And I'm fine if you do life. Like, driver's license revoked. You can take the Greyhound.
Yeah.
So, okay. So before we get into the bigger topic, here's what I'm surviving-ish. So I already kind of said one in the intro with the fact. So what I'm surviving-ish is me right now. That there's something going on with me that I haven't been able to figure out just yet. But there's gonna be a lot of growth in it. So it's gonna be that ish reverse,
Mm.
which brings me to when you were talking about the reverse ish. Before that, we were talking about kind of like palate cleansers. Maybe instead of calling them palate cleanser episodes, we have the reverse-ish episodes, which are palate cleansers. I might steal that.
Ah,
I might steal that from you.
ah.
Have your people contact my people, we'll discuss.
Exactly.
But I like that. So I decided that I wanted to redo the outside of my house. And just a little lift, you know, just a little paint here and there. I had a deck built, which I love. I had it done like 8 months ago, so the wood has now been seasoned. The constructioners called it today, which is time to paint. But I'm also in a place where I'm like, I can do some of this myself. And so I go and I buy paint and I get home, I from work today, I have dinner. I look at the clock, I'm like, I've got like 20 minutes before you and I are to jump on and record. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna paint. So I open the paint, I get a brush. I don't tape anything. I'm like, the mowers will mow and it'll be fine if paint gets grass. And I even gave myself a talk of David, you're gonna take your time and you're gonna do this right. You're gonna have patience. I'm a liar. I lied to myself. And so finally I'm like, so one of my painter friends was like, no, you need like a little like one of those little like they're, you know, just like 3 inches long, but it's also a roller because I have like the picket fence thing on my
Mm.
deck. And they're like, oh, this would be perfect for that. Well, I forgot. So I just bought like a regular paintbrush. So then I think, oh, well, then I just take it and I just, you know, like run it across, but well, paint goes everywhere. I have paint on my jeans that I love, which I'm not too mad at that because it kind of adds to the character because I've had them for like 4 or 5 years. But I just got this shirt the other day from a friend of mine who owns a company that does shirts. And so it says, which this episode won't come out on the 4th of July, but it'll come out in July. So it's still kind of fitting. But it says, Happy birthday, America. Sorry. Sorry, the party is so lame. But There's just little punts and jokes, but I'm going to share the link because he's helping me with my merch, so I'll share the link to all this stuff in the show notes as well. But I got paint on it. I have paint. I have more paint on my hands than that's on the deck, all in 10 minutes of painting, Daniel.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of painting in my time, so I know the struggle. That's rough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I I even told myself, we're gonna have patience. We're just going to enjoy this. A new album came out from one of my favorite artists. I now know every song by heart. So I was like, we're just gonna play it out loud, in the yard and we'll sing and we'll just have like a lovely time. And so it's time to jump on and record with Daniel. And then I don't know if I thought, okay, I've got 10 minutes and I can have this whole deck, which is the size of my house. I can have this whole thing done before I get on the call with Daniel. I don't know why
Whoa,
I think that.
that was very ambitious.
Yeah, and very wrong.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you a picture when we get off. I'll have to send you a picture of what I accomplished versus what the goal is versus what I thought I was going to accomplish in the 10
Right.
minutes.
Right.
So that's where I'm at. And if you know how this is connected to my trauma, I would love for you to tell me. If not, we can move on to the next subject.
Yeah, I don't think I can psychoanalyze that in any way.
The next episode, I'm going to have a therapist on.
Oh,
You can
cool.
join us if you'd like.
All right.
I was disconnected.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel, we've had a lot of, lovely conversations between, like I said, you on Unholier and TikTok. I follow you. You have recently started doing a new series. And so, what I would like for you to do, in case there is a new listener that hasn't listened to your first episode yet, give us just a brief little background of where you're coming from, leading to this new series that you're doing on TikTok that's doing really well and getting some traction, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I started off in a what some people call a religious cult. It certainly had cult-like tendencies for sure, but it was a very fundamentalist Christian sect. And I left it a few years ago, and then since then, I sort of I wanted to share my story a little bit and then be able to help people feel like they're not alone if they're going through something similar, and maybe help people to think a little bit if they're still stuck, because it's hard to see the fog when you're still in the fog. When you come out of it, it's a lot easier to see. So now that I'm out of it, I'm trying to bring up some information that hopefully people will be able to see that they're in the fog and try to draw them out a little bit. And then, like I said, help the people who are drawing out to try to feel like they're not completely alone in this, because I certainly felt very, very alone when I went through it myself.
Yeah.
So I started a series, at least initially, called Silly Things I Used to Believe When I Was a Christian. And I tried to do it from within a Christian mindset, within like a mindset of taking the Bible seriously and stuff, even though I don't actually think it's literally true. I tried to think back, if I knew some of the things I knew that I know now back then,
Yeah.
how I can sort of reframe it. So silly things I used to believe when I was a Christian. And then I sort of moved on and did a very short Bible contradictions series. I could do more eventually. I probably will. But recently, I also did 3 or 4 videos where I'm reacting and responding to Christian content creators to sort of show them where I disagree and where I think that they're going wrong. And that will, of course, lead us into that latest video I did.
Yeah, which I do have questions about that one. But before we do, I love that this came to the way that it did. And so, did you think that you were just going to do like one and see what happens and that you wouldn't do any more, but then there ended up being traction and because people were responsive to it?
So I actually I've always had these things, even when I was still in church, where I was like, I would scratch my head and be like, that's wrong, right? Like I'm hearing like a sermon, and I've tried throughout most of my life to be a critical thinker, but that's hard to juggle when
Yeah.
you're still like stuck in this sort of cultish mindset. It's very difficult when you've been like heavily indoctrinated, and you're also very curious, more like naturally. So it's hard to juggle those. But even when I was young, I would have questions or have things when I would hear in a sermon and be like, I don't think you thought that through because that doesn't seem to be true at all. And so when I decided to maybe put out, okay, silly things I used to believe when I was a Christian, I immediately had like 10 things that came to me, like immediately. So I knew at least I wanted to make some of those and just see what happens. If nothing happens from it, then it is what it is. But I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Have you started receiving any negative feedback from it? Not because of the content, but because people are being defensive of their religion and belief. Like, no, there was an ark and there was only two apes, which is something I want us to discuss. Like, have you started having that kind of feedback yet, or has everything been pretty positive?
So the TikTok comments are more positive. I posted several of them on my YouTube page as well, which is the same name, Daniel de la Noche. But the YouTube comments are like all very, very angry. Like almost every comment is like, "You're wrong. How dare you? You were never a real Christian." Blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, "Eh, you guys are just children at this point. Like you're just throwing tantrums in the comment section. There's no need for that." But continue, I guess. Thanks for the engagement on my content, I
I
guess.
mean, good or bad, you're getting me out into the algorithm because I have found where, I had told you how I've started doing like little political segments in or political little mini episodes on TikTok. Lovely. Facebook, like people were tagging me and mad because I had a clip about wanting to feed children.
Mm.
This dude named Brian said to me, why do you always sing while you talk? I was talking about wanting children to be fed.
What?
And he says that I sing when I talk. And I said, I said, which I'm trying to not read the comments or respond to them at all, period, even the good ones, because I want to treat everyone equally. And because they do hurt my feelings sometimes and bring me down, and I refuse to let that happen. But I said, I don't know. I guess it's just my voice and weird things happen, such as your name is Brian. Like come on, dude. And honestly, he was probably a bot. But I keep trying to tell myself that if I'm getting into the algorithm where these bots are finding me to respond, then I'm doing something right, which in their eyes means I'm doing something very, very wrong. You know? But what I'm also learning too is the type of generation that is active in certain social medias, right? So like
Right.
on
Yeah.
TikTok, where there's a younger, more open-minded, diverse kind of group, there's absolutely you can get some ugly stuff from there too. But for the most
Of course.
part, it's usually pretty even if there's a disagreement, it's handled safely. As to
Mm.
where Facebook, like I woke up one day and I talked about me being raped and attacked and almost murdered by a straight guy. And it was a little clip about that, just of my story. And I woke up to an abundance of messages of people wanting to find me and finish the job. Thank you, Facebook. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
so
crazy.
it's crazy. But so your idea with this, the first thing I thought I went when I was scrolling through and you popped up on my FYP. You said things I used to believe when I was a Christian. So tell me about this title, right? So does that mean that you do not identify as Christian any longer, but you still believe? And does that mean that you don't believe these things anymore, that there's truth still behind it somehow? Like what was your thoughts on this title for the series?
So I certainly don't identify as a Christian anymore, but I don't actually necessarily believe in any God or supernatural realm anymore. I'd be willing to if I saw good evidence. I would love to be, honestly, I'd love to be wrong about that. I'd love to find one day that there is some sort of supernatural realm going on. But currently, I don't like actively believe in it. And certainly, I think Christianity is demonstrably incorrect, actually.
Yeah.
I have very specific reasons for that. And I even mentioned them, or at least four of them, in one of my recent videos. But I think Christianity is, well, the thing is, I don't hate Christians. And this is what people don't understand a lot of times. I'm not mad, okay? Most of my loved ones, like my family especially, are very, very deep in the same sort of fundamentalist Christian like movement that I was.
Yeah.
So I'm not angry. I don't hate them, nothing like that. I just wish that they could see the problems that the reason why they have to have cognitive dissonance about learning different ideas, the fact that they have to avoid learning certain things about history and science, because if they did, then they'd realize that a lot of what they believe is incorrect. And so this series, hopefully, will show people at least what I found to be incorrect, things that I used to believe that I no longer believe, not just because I'm not a Christian anymore, but also because they're just demonstrably wrong. Because I don't say things that are stupid I used to believe, and I'm because I'm not stupid anymore. I don't believe it's not nothing like this. I literally go out, first of all, I say silly because I don't want it to be taken super seriously, but or as an attack, right? What I want to do is say, I used to believe this. I think it's silly, and here's why I think it's silly. It's not just name calling or throwing shade. I'm specifically saying, look, I think this belief is silly. I used to have this belief, but here's why I wouldn't now, even if I was a Christian, or this is why I wouldn't be a Christian anymore, things like that. I just want people to understand why I think it's silly, and maybe they can have a little bit of critical thinking of their own and see a little bit of what I'm seeing, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's what I love about this approach, right? Like I in the past couple of years now identify as atheist. I do not. And what I feel like what you're telling me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I feel like you're telling me is you're not trying to tell these people that they're wrong. You're not trying to convert anyone. You're not trying to, you want them to have the critical thinking for them to figure out themselves. If they think about it and they still want to believe that, fine. If my thing is with religion, I don't care what you believe in. I don't care if you think God is this, whatever. I don't care. But don't try to force me to believe what you believe. Stop telling me that your religion is the only one that is correct. Don't give me the ultimatum that I have to love this person or this being in order to not burn for eternity because I don't do narcissistic shit very well. That person, that the creation, the creator that they're identifying and describing, um, he doesn't sound that great.
Right.
And I'm not into it. But if he's good for you, if that is good for you, I want you to have that. If that gives
Mm.
you comfort, if that gives you security in some kind of way, I want you to have that. I won't take it away from you. Don't force me to have it because I will never knock on your door and tell you, let me show you the way to being atheist. If I have questions on how to become a Christian, if I want to believe what Bob next door believes, I will knock on his door and I will say, help me, help me. I want this for me. Until I do that, you be you, let me be me, and we're all gonna be fine. I'm not trying to take away from you. Don't force you down me.
Right. The funny thing is, I actually wouldn't mind if people knocked on my door to like try to reconvert me. I think it would kind of be fun. But the thing is, I think it would be fun because I know the Bible most likely better than they do.
Well, and
So,
that's the thing. They would have to be
yeah,
open to have, like, if someone knocked on my door and wanted to just sit down on my porch and have a lovely conversation where they were
sure.
open-minded to my side of things,
Yeah,
of maybe why I don't believe, as well as I pay them that same respect of what they do believe. If we can have that conversation, run it. Let's do it. I love those conversations.
right. Yeah.
Um, but it's the minute I say I'm atheist, if they don't walk away, they say, well, you know what happens to atheists. And they paint this fire for me, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, so, and I'm sorry, I probably interrupted you, but I know, like, knock on my door. Let's have a conversation if we can have a
sure.
conversation.
I found that ever since I left, the people who knew me well when I from before that, don't want to have that conversation really because they would feel it's too uncomfortable. Even like my siblings, they don't want to talk about it. Most of them take it very seriously still. But I had one of my siblings ask me one question about something I think about. I don't really get into it exactly what he asked me, but he asked me one question. I answered as well as I could, and from my current perspective, and then he was like, and he could you could sort of see like the wheels turning, like that makes more sense than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Right? But then he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And I understand that's fair. I love my siblings regardless of whether or
Sure.
not they're willing to listen, obviously, because I don't bring it up. Like when we go to like my mom's place for Christmas or my dad's place for like
Right.
Thanksgiving or whatever, I don't bring it up. I just if you want to talk about it, I'm open. If you don't, then that's cool too. We'll just be family. We'll try to just have a normal, nice holiday.
I find it so breathtaking, the fragility, the insecurity that people have in their faith in Christianity. If your faith was that strong, you could handle little old me saying, I don't believe it. You could handle little old me saying, I'm not sure if the ark story is really true.
Right.
And I know this is probably a bad comparison, right? But like, if I came to you and I said, Reba McEntire is my number one, I know every song by heart. There's not a song that I don't like. I know them. I pulled one out of a hat right now and I can sing it to you. And you said, I don't like her. I don't like this. I don't like that. These lyrics are bad. I don't feel like I have to defend that. I'm, you're not going to change my mind. I still
Right.
think she's my number one, and I'm just going to listen to that amazing song without you. You lose. You know, because I'm
Exactly.
confident in my love for her. I'm confident
Right.
in my respect for her music. I'm confident in what it gives me. And if you don't get the same message that I got, then fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, but what I will do, or what a Christian would do, is they would say, we're staying on this Zoom until you until I've changed your mind and you believe in God. You can
Yeah.
tell me right now you hate Reba. But I would move past that and I would still have this conversation
Right.
and I would hang up from our Zoom call when we're done and I would listen to a Reba song and sing it to the top of my lungs just like I would do if you said you loved Reba.
Yeah.
It changes nothing. I'm secure and what Reba's music does for me. And again, I know this is because I'm not in a Reba cult. Reba's not a cult leader. So I know it's a lame comparison, but like that's just what I wrap my mind around. Like I don't have to defend this that I have, right?
Mm.
That I love that brings me peace and joy. I don't
Yeah.
need you to love Reba for me to have peace and joy with what I feel when I listen to her songs.
Yeah. And I will say, and I want to sort of interject this a little bit.
Please.
There is somebody very close to me, one of my loved ones, who actually saw the episode that I was on with you, completely unrelated. I hadn't even like posted it or anything to like my Facebook. He just called me out of the blue one day. Hey, I saw you on this Surviving-ish podcast, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about different things or whatever. So he actually is, and it's weird. He's actually a pastor's son. I won't say his name. You
Sure.
know who you are. Much love, buddy. Much love.
Yes.
But he called me up and I understand how you feel. And, he was trying to empathize a little bit with me. And we had a great conversation. And I'm very grateful for the fact that he, first of all, even listened to the podcast because he comes from a very like hyper fundamentalist kind of background, just like most of my family and all the people that I was really, really close with. All of them were just, I mean, I was only close with people in that particular Christian movement. I wasn't really
Sure.
close with anybody else outside of like a couple of jiu-jitsu friends because I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Outside of that, my only friends were just people in the church, people in a very, very fundamentalistic type of Christian movement.
I love that. And I love that he just stumbled across it somehow, right? Like
Yeah, I
you
have no
didn't shove it
idea.
down his throat.
Yeah, yeah.
So if he's listening again, if you ever wanted to join me for a conversation, or if there could ever be a conversation that me, you, and Daniel, if Daniel was willing for all three of us to have together, I would love that.
Mm.
I always tell, and I think I even said this to you before, Daniel, is I don't want to hang out with 100 Davids because I'm never going to learn,
Right.
right? Like I want to hang out with all kinds of kinds. I want to have these conversations with people that have the best of intent
Mm.
and where respect can be given. I don't need. There was a conversation I had the other day with someone, and the gist of the conversation is I'm not, as a gay man, I'm not asking for more rights or privilege. I'm asking for equal. I'm asking,
Mm.
I'm not asking for you to like, that does not mean you have to shake my hand. It doesn't mean you have to come over to my house for dinner. It doesn't mean we have to be besties and like each other's shit on Facebook. But you can respect my existence. And if that means you turn your head and walk past me at Kroger, fine. I,
I wouldn't
I
walk past you at Kroger, David.
well, of course you wouldn't, but if someone
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to,
yeah.
fine.
Of course, yeah.
But why does that mean that I should be less than because you
Mm.
wouldn't want to just ignore me? All I'm
Right.
asking
Yeah, yeah.
I'm giving you permission to ignore me. We don't have to be besties. The general you and I, we do have to be besties.
Right, of course.
But like I just can't wrap my mind around these things, right? Like I want people to have Christianity if that brings them comfort, if that brings them peace, if it's used the right way,
Right. Right.
when it's used to hurt people, I do have an issue with that. But that goes back to
Mhm.
the whole like morals and values conversation that we had kind of off record. Before we can assign a title to something, it's like now it's morals and values.
Mhm.
And that's where I want to be proactive in saying, no, sir. So, with that being said, you've done these videos, they've evolved to other things. Before we discuss what they've evolved to, where you do stitches with other creators, I want to talk about how when you're probably not having to grasp very far to find the things that you find silly that you believed in, right? Like, because you said the minute I thought about doing this, I immediately had 10. I know that there's been times that I've done a recording and I've just been freely speaking, and then I'm like, oh, I just said that out loud. I didn't realize I felt that way, which led to a whole other episode. So, have you had those moments where you're like, okay, here's going to be a 10-part series, but then you find that, like, oh crap, while I was recording this, I found out that I also think this is silly. Like, tell me about your
Oh yeah.
process with that.
So like the first one I ever did was that the Bible is the Word of God. And the problems with that are pretty simple. The Bible talks about the Word of God, but while the Bible was being written, the Bible didn't exist. So the word of whatever they were talking about, the Word of God, definitely wasn't the Bible. So you can't call it that. Additionally, or at least you're using it in a way different way than anybody who wrote the Bible actually meant it. But if you look at how it's used, also that term is just used for generally an orally delivered message by a prophet, generally speaking, right? So it wasn't like a written thing necessarily. And even like the Jewish canon, like the Hebrew scriptures, back in Jesus' time, they weren't even like a single canonized thing where it's all these books and only these books. That really wasn't a thing at the time. And so as I did that, I was the first one I did, and then immediately I was thinking other things that I used to believe about the Bible and about specifically like the King James Version, for example. And then I went and did a video on that, and I kept thinking about more and more things. I have a list in my notes app, and I have there's probably like 35, so I have plenty of material to go on if I want to continue.
Yeah, I would love to have an episode with me, you, and Jenny, especially with you doing
Yeah,
these series, because Jeannie and I have talked about this. So,
right.
another question I have for you, which is still related, but it might be shifting gears just for a second, is when it comes to deconstruction, with the conversations you've had with the people that you know and what you've personally experienced, do you find a difference in the ability to deconstruct based on gender. Because and what I mean by that is I find that my personal opinion, right? Not a doctor, nothing like that, but my personal opinion in the stories that I've listened to from both genders, that men seem to have the hardest time.
It could be. That does make a little bit of sense with sort of like on average male psychology. Obviously, psychology differs in varying and crazy ways, but like on average, men tend to take harder, more strict stances on things,
Yeah.
and then women tend to be a little bit more maybe adaptable is one of the ways to say it, or I think I think adaptable is probably a good way,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a great descriptive and also respectable word for it.
And so, and there's nothing wrong with taking a hard stance on things, and there's nothing wrong with being adaptable. I'm not trying to put
Right.
like a moral thing on it, right?
Yeah.
This is just like tendencies between genders. So that would make some sense. I will say though that part of it is on what kind of religious background you had, because if you came from a religious background to where everything had to be correct or none of it was, those types of people, if they find out even one thing, they don't go to like a different form of theism. They don't go to like a sort of non-denominational-ish kind of a general theism, or like maybe not even religious, but like spiritual, but not religious. That's really not what happens with people who had like a strict fundamentalism. If they start to learn things that crack that foundation of their even one thing is wrong, then all of it's wrong. Well, then one thing goes wrong, or they find out one thing that was wrong, and boom, the whole thing tends to crumble down. And
Yeah.
so that sort of doctrinal strictness, maybe, tends to be so fragile and brittle to where if you put enough pressure, even just in one spot, it sort of just cracks.
Yeah. I just thought about this and I think it would be an episode that I would like to do. And I'm glad we're recording because I would probably forget. But I would love to find out like the stats and research on men getting into a cult versus women getting into a cult. And because I wonder if it's harder for men, in my opinion, right? If it's harder for men to deconstruct, does that mean it's easier for women to get indoctrinated too?
Mm,
Or like what would be the research on that? So I
right.
would love to do some research on that and find out like, and I was mind blown when I spoke with some people about people who have been in a religious cult. I thought that once you deconstruct, you can't get sucked back in. But it is actually pretty easy
Surprise.
for them to get sucked back into some kind of and so when I was fine, I was like I was mind blown with that. And so we actually had a doctor that was on that was talking to us about that. And so I think I'm glad we're recording this because I want to do a little bit of research on that, and I think I want to do an episode on that. I
Because
think that could be pretty interesting.
some people will leave fundamentalistic religions and then they'll end up taking another fundamentalist, very, very strict stance in something else, right?
Yeah,
Maybe even just the reverse of everything they thought before, they'll just hard reverse. And if you don't believe with their new reverse position, they'll be just as vitriolic as they were when they believed the opposite thing.
yeah,
Or they'll get sucked into things like crystals and stuff like this and try to like evangelize on Facebook about how you should do this and believe in crystals and this kind of thing. People just, as they say, and this is it's such a cliche, it's almost useless to say it, but I'll say it anyway. It's a lot easier to fool someone than it is to convince someone that they have been fooled.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Damn it, Daniel. That was a good one. Okay, so you said that you have done like what 4 or 5 episodes now, or TikTok videos, mini series, little clips that you do where where you've come across other people that I guess they're religious and talking about what they're finding in the Bible that they believe, what they choose to be factual, what they say is facts or proven. When fact and proven with the video that I'm about to talk about, when those are the two
Yeah.
words that she used. which was your most recent video that I came across. So this video was a lovely girl. She looked lovely. I
Sure.
liked her accent. I loved her tattoos.
Me
Uh,
too.
but that's neither here nor there. But we uh, do not necessarily agree with maybe some of the things that she believes, and but she was saying that she has factual proof of what was said in the Bible is true or something like that. I can't remember exactly how she said it, and then you
Yeah.
just dished it. So take over from here. Talk about that.
So the title of her video was Seven Bible Facts That Will Blow Your Mind and Prove That God Exists, I think is how she introduced it. And some of them didn't even have to do with the Bible at all. So they weren't even bad Bible facts. They weren't even Bible related, really. But most of them were. So she went through, and what she gave weren't facts necessarily. They were things about the Bible that she found interesting and thought proved something. And then I just sort of went through and showed how that was very not true.
Yeah,
Even the thing about blood types, and I think that might have been one of the ones you had a question on. She
yeah,
said that, well, Noah on the ark. Noah, there was 8 people with Noah, including Noah, of course. And there are also 8 major blood types that people have. Isn't that amazing? And I'm like, no, that's not really amazing because first of all, it's not really how blood types work. And secondly, 2 of those people were already done having kids. So it's not like that's not really what's going on here, obviously. And then you only have 2 every animal, and many animals have the same type of blood types that humans have. So that point that she was trying to make was just, it's like you're clearly not thinking this through. There's no critical thought going on, and it got on my nerves enough for me to make a video about it. Well, the thing is, that part is sort of understandably silly. Yes, if you did some critical thought, you would. But there are some other things that seem to be just blatant lies, and that is the kind of thing that annoys me the most because, like, she debunked one of her own points in the video when she made a point about the molecule laminin, which is a type of protein that helps hold cells together and stuff like that. It's a very, very vital protein that our bodies produce. But she said that it makes a perfect cross, and she showed a diagram of like laminin like molecules and then overlaid Jesus on it to like see it looks like a cross. And then she showed an image from an electron microscope that showed how it was formed, and it wasn't what she said. It wasn't a perfect cross. It was like one squiggly and then another squiggly that sort of crossed over the other squiggly. And it's like you literally just debunked your own video accidentally, maybe? Are you just not thinking through this at all? Because you can look up other pictures of laminin under electron microscopes and see that some of them look like, if you squint hard enough, look like swastikas, or they look like just a random squiggly.
that's what I was
Like,
going to say. Is when she was like, "Doesn't this look like a cross?" I was like, no, it looks like
no.
a swastika. Like, but those are the kind of things that I've seen, Daniel, and maybe where you've deconstructed because I was not like in a cult like
Right.
religion. So maybe you can help me understand this a bit. But like, I know that there's that whole saying of we only see what we want to see, and I'm sure
Mhm.
there are times that I have only seen what I want to see or only heard what I wanted to hear.
Mhm.
Now. I will say that I don't know that mine has been like religious based or based on something that could be detrimental to someone. And maybe that has happened and I just haven't recognized it yet. But like, do you think because I really felt like when I was watching her, when I was watching her video and the parts that she's in, I really felt like if we put her up to a lie detector test and we asked her these questions or she said the same speech, I think that she would have passed it because I
I
think
think
this is
so.
her truth.
Maybe she does honestly believe it. It's pretty difficult for me to like grant that because then you have to just think that she just has no critical thinking in her entire brain because it was so easy to just deconstruct almost every one of those. The fish one, I had to do a little bit of digging to try to see if there was any actual because do you remember the fish part? because there's, like the Christian sign of a fish or whatever.
Yeah.
So that does come from an ancient Christian idea of taking the Greek letters that spell the Greek word for fish, which at the time I think was pronounced like ichthus. But regardless of that, they basically took each letter and spelled out with an acrostic, Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior, right? And that was a real acrostic that was used by ancient Christians. However, there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that it was a secret code like she claimed. And she's like, it was an ancient secret code that saved lives. It's like it didn't like there's no evidence to suggest that. So it seems like you're just making stuff up and or you just heard it somewhere and are just uncritically repeating it. And that doesn't it's not a great look.
Yeah. And to the listener, I want to throw this out there that Daniel nor I would ever disrespect anyone. This is not an attack toward this. I mean, she seemed like a lovely lady. She seemed like this is what she truly believes. And it's like one of the wars that I have in myself is what she believes. Is it hurting people? And does it hurt me if she believes these things? Is it hurting herself if she believes these things? Like, how do I pick the battle? But it's one of those things, Daniel, where if you continue to look into Christianity and when it could start out with something as simple as there's only two apes, two elephants on this boat, but then there's all these different breeds, and fine. I don't care how many animals you think is on this arc and how evolution happens within or whatever. I don't care because that's not hurting anyone. But that leads to what we had just talked about earlier, a preacher standing before their congregation saying, now we need to line up all the gay people and execute them. It
Yeah, of
leads to that from and not every church, not every thing,
course.
but
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard I mean there's been multiple preachers say it,
Mhm.
and especially here in the South, people wear shirts to church that says Jesus and guns. You know what I mean? Like they carry guns to their church and they think it goes side by side and it hand in hand or whatever. And all it takes is that one person to hear that and think they're doing God's work by coming to my house and executing me. And
So
so
I think it's important to draw the link there because it's easy to say like this sort of type of thinking can lead to this other type of thinking.
yeah.
Some people won't understand that right away, but I think it's important to point out the link here is thinking with no critical thought. You believe
Right.
things without critically thinking about them or looking at maybe why someone might disagree. If you're willing to just take something that somebody says at face value and just believe it just because they're in a religious position of authority, you are now setting yourself up to potentially believe or do something that's harmful. And yes, beliefs themselves can be extremely harmful. So I really don't want to hear people talk about, well, just because you believe this doesn't mean that you'll, oh, that's true. You won't necessarily believe one harmful thing just because you believe this one untrue
Right.
thing. But if you are willing to believe things regardless of whether or not they're true, that, in my opinion, sets you up to potentially believe things that could be harmful. And you wouldn't even have the level of critical thinking to even recognize that in the first place. And that is a problem.
And that's beautifully said because I'm not trying to say that if you think there's two like I'm not trying to say that her video that her next video is going to be like let's line up the gays, like
Of
that
course.
that's not.
Of course.
And
Of
of
course.
course, and of course you and the listeners know that for my own peace of mind I want to say that. But I think it goes back to if you cannot critically think about Noah's Ark, for example. And I know I keep going back to that, but that's kind of what I think what her number one was. So if you can't critically think about this Noah's Ark thing, then how are we going to be able to critically think about what the Bible does or does not say about someone that's different than you? And also, listener, keep in mind that like sometimes this shit gets a little triggering to me. I'm a blue dot in a red state that is religious based. The person that broke into my home, sin, raped me, sin, thought he murdered me, sin, like, uh, is identifies as Christian. And so how if we cannot if I see people, and I'm trying to make sure I'm saying this the right way, allow grace, but if I'm finding and running into people that cannot have a moment to sit back and really dig deep and really think about what does this passage really mean? Like what like I'm taking it as face value, I'm taking it as what my preacher says, but let's critically think about this. If you can't do that, if the general you can't do that about a Noah's Ark, or if Joseph and Mary lived to be 780 years old, or whatever, if we can't critically think about those things, then how can I feel secure as your neighbor that you're going to critically think before you shoot, before you fire your gun? And I know that's 2 to a 10, right? But I'm a victim of these things. So yeah, I go from a 2 to a 10. Noah's Ark might be a 2, killing your gay neighbor might be the 10, but was a victim of that. So it all becomes scary,
Yeah,
right? And but I also want to say that that is also my triggers are my responsibility.
sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but I think from what I've seen so far, you handled them pretty well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm doing the best I can. But, and I do want to say, if I did word anything that sounded insensitive or insulted, that was truly not my thought. This is also me trying to learn because I've never been crazy deep in religion. I
Mhm.
was light religious or religious light until I went the atheist route. And I'm never trying to be insensitive or insulting. Sometimes it's just maybe I don't know how to best ask my question or describe that feeling, right? But luckily you and the listeners, you all are amazing and you know me. So you know my heart. So okay, so have you gotten someone that you've stitched? Because there's been 4 or 5 now that you've done. Have they re-stitched you? Have they or commented or responded in any kind of way at all yet?
Not that I can tell. I think if they tagged me at least, then I probably would get a notification about that. So I haven't yet. I've had a good number of comments by other people on them, and that's been interesting to see. You always have the people who I like. There's a decent amount of support, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But there's also like the occasional person who will come in and usually say something like, "You just got to believe Jesus loves you," and I'm like, that doesn't really answer anything in the post. So
Yeah.
thanks, I guess. Like, yeah.
So when you if you were able to put yourself back into the shoes of when you were indoctrinated before you deconstructed, and if you were scrolling through TikTok and you came across this new Daniel, this new you, deconstructed you, and you were watching your videos, what would you think immediately? Like, would you scroll? Would you want to comment? Would you like, what would your thought process be if you heard someone say the things that you're saying now?
So I probably would scroll past it pretty quick
Yeah.
and try not to give it the time of day. If for some reason I was like compelled to, if they said something about the Bible, then I would want to like come back at them in some way. But the thing is, the type of religious indoctrination I had was so like rigid that if you so rigid that it was brittle. Like I said before, like if you take something that's that brittle and you put enough pressure on even just a small point, it can sort of all crack apart. And so that's the kind of belief that at least I was indoctrinated into, even if I didn't stay like that. Because eventually I figured out a couple things weren't necessarily true, and I try to just keep everything else right. But like eventually, like enough pressure is put on like a particular point that it all comes down, right? Which is what happened to me. But like if I came across something like that back when I was, let's say if I was to imagine one of my siblings coming across it on TikTok or whatever, I think they would just scroll away from it as fast as possible and get back to cat videos or whatever they were watching.
But then there's also that whole thing of like, if this came across your FYP, because I feel like your phone knows you better than anyone, right? Like, here's the conversation I have to someone, here is the conversation I have by myself. It sees the crazy things I watch and like or whatever. So when I see a video appear that's kind of out of my realm of videos, I'm like, okay, what did I say? What conversation I had? What thought was did I have when my phone was present for this to come to me? And maybe that's giving too much thought into the algorithm, but I believe those things, right? Like you and I could talk right now, and this would be a test. You and I could talk right now about, I think I want to buy a new refrigerator. By this time tomorrow, I'm willing to bet you I can screenshot a something is going to come up about, have you seen this Wi-Fi Bluetooth refrigerator that would fit perfectly, and I want to send it to you. But so like, do you think if you did come across your siblings, or if your siblings came across one of your videos, do you think, or maybe your siblings isn't the best to use because they are already so tied to you, but like, do you think if these videos showed up on someone else's page, it's because they were already having some kind of conversation that their phone somehow overheard? Or would it just be because it was religion, period?
That's a good point. I think it would be because maybe they were thinking about it already, and they were maybe looking up videos of people discussing from either side about whether or not things are worth looking at with a more critical lens. But it is weird the things that'll pop up. But you were asking me before what my reaction would have been. I had an interesting conversation a couple years ago with somebody who reached out to me who was still in the church. And he's like, "Hey, brother, just wanted to let you know I'm praying with you. If you want, or praying for you. If you want to go and have lunch together sometime, I'd love to do that." And I was surprised that he would do that because nobody else in the church reached out to me at
You
all.
talked about him in the first episode.
And then he
Yeah.
reached out to me and we talked. And he asked me like like I told him I don't really believe in Christianity anymore. And he asked me why. And I told him. And it's like it went through one ear and out the other. Just like no, like it didn't even enter into his mind. I'm like, am I talking to like
Yeah.
a computer program right now? Like, are you an NPC? Like, are you, no, like, no self-awareness at all, no ability to critically think? Because he didn't really try to like answer my points or try to like respond in any way. He was just like, oh, okay. And then like, anyway, like on
Right.
to the next whatever. So it is unfortunate to see when people have such a little ability to think critically and be self-aware. It's because I've always been a little bit more on the self-aware side. It baffles me a little bit when people have such little self-awareness and ability to think,
Yeah.
to potentially consider that they might be wrong about something. It's hard to imagine for me.
Yeah, and I really admire that about you and so many people that, from the Unholier podcast that, that Jenny hosts. I do the editing, so I kind of get to hear the story. It's done in sections, so I don't hear it from beginning to end, but then I'm a part of the live on Tuesday when usually after or yeah, after their episode or the night their episode is being released, and I get to hear more, ask questions. And the what I'm finding is so common in people that have deconstructed, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about from a religious cult, like just deconstructed from some kind of mentality, some kind of something, some kind of belief, is it comes into, can we just be open-minded enough to think, what if I'm wrong? What I do find very common in religious cults is, this religion is the only one ever. No other, every other religion is pretty much Satanist, satanic.
Yeah.
This is the only religion that can be. I am right, you're wrong. There's a possibility that I'm wrong because my preacher said it, my preacher said it from the Bible, and the Bible said, and I think there was red ink involved, and so everything is right. And but what I'm finding that is so calming, that is so, and it also seems to be so freeing, is when people can say, it's okay if I'm wrong. I'm open-minded to being wrong. And
Mhm.
if I am wrong, show me, because I would love to learn the right way. And I just find that to be when people get to that place, like even when I'm editing the story in Unholier and I'm editing this person's journey and timeline, you can see in real time the minute they get to the fact of it and however they phrase it, but the phrase of saying, now I'm okay being wrong. Now you can see like their shoulders lower. There's a sigh of relief. And that is like my happy ending for when I'm editing. I'm like, we made it. When I see them reach that place, because it has to be so freeing.
Yeah. That's definitely the feeling I got because when you're so stuck in a particular mindset, it's like a defense mechanism to not think about anything that could potentially contradict it,
Yeah.
to not look at it, to not research, and to just stay as far away from it as possible. And when you finally get to the point where you're not so attached to believing it has to be a certain way, then you're open to learning anything. You don't mind learning more Bible history, history of the Old Testament, history of the ancient world, for example, or how the Bible canon was developed, why certain books are in the Bible, who we think wrote them, and who we think, like which ones we think were probably written by someone unknown. So there's so much that I learn more now than I ever did because I have a Bible degree. Like I went to Bible college, I have a Bible theology degree, and I've learned more after Bible college than I ever did in it.
So I want to ask you this, and this might be shifting a little bit, but we were talking off the record of a story that you had about a dance. And do you have time to still share that with us? I know it's kind of shifting, but it seemed like this story was like it was like a kind of a prominent factor in your life.
It wasn't that prominent, but it
Okay,
was something that sort of just stuck out to me as hypocrisy in the moment and just
gotcha. Okay.
the silly beliefs that a lot of the people in the independent fundamental Baptist movement have. This was while I was in Bible college. Now, on my mom's side, I have some Irish heritage, and I had cousins growing up who did like Irish step dancing and stuff like that, which I always thought was really cool
Yeah.
because when I was young, I was like I would come across videos of like river dance, for example. I don't know if you've ever heard of that,
Oh,
but yeah. So I was like, man, this Irish folk music is great, and the dancing and it's just really cool, right? So while I was in Bible college, Riverdance, because it's like a particular troupe and company kind of, right? So they were sort of doing it one last North American tour and they were maybe going on hiatus or maybe like considering shutting down or something like that. I forget exactly. But they were coming through and I wanted to go really bad, right? And then my sister, she also wanted to go. I had a sister who was with me in Bible college at the time. And then the girl that she had already broken up with me by this time, but well, that's a different story. We were sort of dating for a little while and we broke up. Anyways, she had Irish heritage as well, a lot more than I did. So her name was at the time at least McSpadden, so it's like you can't get more Irish than that. And she
right.
had like red hair and everything. And
I was gonna say, was
she's
she redheaded?
she was, and she's a great person. I have nothing bad to say about her.
Sure.
She's probably still in the IFB, but I still have nothing bad to say about her. She's a very lovely, very intelligent person. But she was also interested as well. So I knew that she would be. So by this time my sister was dating the man who she's now married to, my brother-in-law. And so I was talking with him because we were already friends. And then I said, you know what? If if I try to go, then I know for sure Amber won't be able to go. My sister's Allison, and then the girl who I had dated for a little while, her name was Amber. And I'm like, Amber won't be able to go for sure if I go, but I know Allison wants to go. I know Amber wants to go. Let's maybe you buy Allison's ticket, I'll buy Amber's ticket. We'll send them. They'll be able to go because if you're in like a super strict Bible college, you can't go with like boys and girls out to like a thing together. That's like a non-church related event or whatever.
Yeah,
So
because we'll get
I
pregnant.
know I won't exactly right. So I was like, we'll send them, and then we won't be able to go, but we'll take the L on that and just give that to the girls, right? And so he agreed, and so we purchased the tickets, and then shortly before, I think it was like maybe a week before we were supposed to do it, I got called into the college president's office, who was the father of like Amber's father. So he comes and he's like yelling at me. He's like, I can't believe you would do this and send my daughter off to something where she'd be like I don't know, corrupted or something like that. And I'm just like, what? What
Corrupted.
do you you know this is not like hip hop dancing. There's no bumping and grinding here. This is literally just Irish step dancing. And he's like, we preach against dancing. And I'm like, do you think that's an argument? I'm just like mind blown. I'm here with this like person who had been a pastor at one point, also was like a religious leader in the in the group that I was in. So I'm like this person who I'm supposed to look up to and respect and take their words very seriously was just like, I can't believe you would do this. We preach against dancing, blah 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 blah. And I'm just and he said that probably like 3 or 4 times in the meeting. We preach against dancing. I'm like, David danced in the Bible, right? The King David danced in the Bible, and it's not looked at to be as like a bad thing. And so, and I've had discussions with people on that, but like it was so, his mind was so rigid that he could not get past the idea we preach against dancing. He was going to do something that would involve dancing or have my daughter involved in something that involved some kind of dancing. Therefore, it's bad. That was his entire thought process. And it was so mind blowing to me because now, the after the event actually happened, I found out that some of the pastoral staff in the church and some of the college staff, the Bible college staff, went to that event. They went to Riverdance and saw it. And I'm just like, this is the level of hypocrisy that we see, the level of no critical thinking whatsoever that goes into these people, into some of these thoughts. And it annoyed me, of course, at the time so much, but it's so silly looking back on. The whole argument was like, we preach against dancing. I'm like, that's your whole thought process? There's nothing more complex, more reasonable that goes into that? I
It's so
shouldn't, but I
yeah,
am.
yeah, it's so interesting too, and because even when you were saying to him, "Well, this isn't hip hop dancing. It's not," and as if that is a horrible sin. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, and of course, I know that you don't think that, but like at that
Right.
time,
Well, I
the
would
the
have at the
fact that
time,
you
yeah.
were trying to compare it, right? Like,
Right.
well, yeah, you're right. This one, the hip hop, that's very sexual. I can see how that could be sinful, but this is river dancing, which is not like the dirty hip hop, you know?
There's no dirty dancing here. It's
Wow, so interesting. So,
yeah.
okay, so I have a question that I want to ask you, and we might put a pin in it because it could be a
Okay.
question that maybe me, you, and Jenny discuss together. Maybe we do it on a live one night or on another episode. Um, so if you think that it could be a good full episode, we'll put a pin, we won't answer it, and we'll move forward because I have my own answer to it too. So my question would be is I have when I have told people that I'm atheist, a lot of their response is I would rather believe, and if I find out I'm wrong, then that's okay. But if I find out that I'm right, then hashtag winning. I'm not going to tell you what my response is on that because I would like to know, do you think that would be something that would be a long-term, like a long discussion, or is that a quick answer?
No, I think there's multiple ways to answer that. And I think that definitely could be a longer discussion. I think I probably should go pretty soon too, because my wife was expecting me earlier.
Yeah.
But
She should have known that
there,
once you and I start talking, we say 1 hour, it's going to be two.
yeah. So she Oh yeah, right. So that particular idea, like if you're wrong, you stand to lose everything. If I'm wrong, I don't lose anything, right?
Yeah.
But that it's a very like lacking in critical thought kind of idea. Like it's so intellectually shallow that clearly you're not thinking through the different ramifications for that and the different factors that go into belief in the first place and all this. So it's called Pascal's wager, right? And we should definitely have a time where we discuss that because I have multiple different thoughts on it. But
Okay, great. I would love
yeah.
that. I will let you go so you can go be with your wife. Thank you for this conversation. Off what was off record and on. You're more than welcome to reject this, but I will in TikTok, I'll send you my phone number and maybe me, you and Jenny can start a group chat because I have a couple of different ideas. And if not, we'll just do email, whatever you're comfortable with. But thank you, Daniel, so much. I'm going to share the links to your socials. I want the listeners, if they're not already following you, to check out the series that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what evolves to. And of course, you'll be back. We'll do lives. We're gonna do all the things. You're like I said before, you're stuck with me. So next time, let your wife know. Yeah, we said an hour, but it's David. It'll be 2 hours. And David apologizes in advance.
No problem.
But thank you so much. I'll keep you posted on everything as far as release dates, and all that. But yeah, thanks for a great conversation.
Always a fun talking to you, David. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, enjoy your evening. We'll talk soon, buddy.
Take care.
All right, good night.